I quit my job the way a lot of people do, with an email. At 7:13 a.m., July 12th, 2021, I sent this bad boy to my two direct supervisors. Suffice it to say, I let them f***ing have it. I told them exactly why I was leaving a job that I used to really love, a position I'd had for almost 5 years at a place I'd worked for almost 10. In that final year, it had just become toxic. When you leave a toxic job, a lot of the time you have to play nice on your way out the door. Not me in 2021, though. Like, I kept it professional, I had my documentation, I was prepared to stand by exactly what I said here, and I used that to burn some bridges with my two managers. I knew I would never need a letter of recommendation from them, because I was not going to another IT job. I was doing something extremely ill-advised, something legendarily stupid. I was quitting my job to be a content creator. In a vacuum, this is something I unilaterally do not recommend. But as is so often the way, it's the full context that can make a really bad decision a halfway decent one. In 2021, I had a once-in-a-lifetime amount of savings due to current events, you may recall. I also wasn't going to be making any old content. I had already been cosplaying for 12 years, so the content would be about that. I thought I would give it a try and be a content creator for a bit, since I had a safety net I didn't before, and I had to get out of this job either way. It's been 3 years now, and here we are. So I am someone who makes their full-time living off of this. That makes me a professional cosplayer, right? Cosplayer, right? I can't tell. The audio got really messed up last time, and now I'm really paranoid, so I'm just gonna check this really fast if that's okay. I think we're okay on that front. I don't call myself a professional cosplayer. I go out of my way to use any other phrase to describe who I am and what I do. The thing that pays my rent is related to the fact that I make fun costumes, but a more honest answer is the fact that what time is it? That sun looks really, oh my god. I need to set up for stream. This is part of it. I do streams for my patrons, and I go live in like, oh my god, I go live in like a half an hour. I need to make sure OBS didn't set itself on fire. I hope you're cool if I multitask a little bit talking about this. Cosplay is a young art form, and the idea of professional cosplay is even younger. I'm old enough that when I started cosplaying 15 years ago, that idea basically wasn't on the table. And I'm going to talk more about how this concept develops soon, but first let's just establish what ways people can make money off cosplay in 2024. Because professional cosplay isn't really a job, it's more of an umbrella term for 19 different jobs. For people to cosplay, they need cosplays, so there is a market for small businesses that provide products and services for other cosplayers to do this. This can be making digital patterns and craftsmanship advice books, like we see from Kamui Cosplay and Punished Props. The foamsmithing book especially was a huge leap forward in cosplayers self-publishing to share their knowledge with the community. And I still remember the first time I saw a Tumblr post from Kamui about how to add LED lights into your cosplays. Small shops can sell specialized accessories. My buddy Mark has been running an Etsy business for years with the 3D patterns he models and prints. So his job is everything that goes into running that online storefront. And the storefront wouldn't exist without cosplay. Maybe one of the oldest cosplay jobs is just commissions, cosplayers getting paid for the labor and materials of making something custom. Wig commissions especially are really popular, I think because people just don't like styling wigs. Me too, girl. I think wig commissions are also popular because it requires less fitting to a client's shape. It's not that wig styling is inherently easier than making a garment, it's more that a head circumference is a lot easier to fit to than an entire human body. There's a reason why people go to years of school to know how to grade patterns and make fit adjustments. It's a lot of work. This is purely semantics, but I feel like the term commission tends to get used for clients that are regular fellow cosplayers, and the term fabrication tends to get used for clients like a company or a film or stage production. Creators like Volpin Props and Henchman Studios, which are both full multi-person studios and not just individual people, frequently work with companies like Blizzard to create gorgeous replicas from their games for convention announcements and esports tournaments. These are beautifully constructed pieces using some really advanced techniques. The studio tends to work with developers to get early access to these skins to make sure that the finished product is a beautiful advertisement for the game. Usually the person wearing the costume isn't the person who made it, but more like a model who looks a lot like the character. And speaking of conventions, it takes labor to put those on. In America, I think there's hundreds of conventions a year. Most of the people on the ground at cons will be volunteers, but there are event planners and organizers whose main job is producing cosplay-centered events at the conventions we love to go to. And these events are not a one-man show. They require guests and panelists, people who will be part of the programming, and that can also be compensated. When we talk about guesting too, we start to talk about cosplay influencers or content creators, people who are public-facing and known in the community. This is people who make their money through monetization on platforms like Twitch, TikTok, or YouTube with content that's about cosplaying. They also usually have, or we also usually have, I guess this part is me, a membership option on a platform like Patreon, where people who pay a subscription get additional content and benefits like the stream I'm scrambling to set up right now. Because the nature of this job in particular is necessarily being visible, because these kinds of cosplayers have to get seen by so many people on social media, it might naturally be the kind of professional cosplay that people think about when they hear that term. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about having a job that is inherently tied to social media. There's no further implications or considerations or things that I think about every moment I'm awake with regards to capitalism and the commodification of everyday contemporary life by means of techno-feudalism that we're going to talk about in future sections in this video. I'm just a silly little video clown with no thoughts in my head. The absolute scope of cosplay-adjacent jobs doesn't stop there, though. Some people work in princess parties, which is its own micro-industry of people doing kids' entertainment, performing as these established characters at birthdays and celebrations. There's also people who do very much not for kids at all cosplay as workers, these days on platforms like OnlyFans. I'm not going to go too in-depth on the labor and logistics that goes into sex work, mainly because I think Daddy YouTube isn't going to like it, but Lizard Lee gives 2 thumbs up to sex workers. That's my official endorsement. No ifs, ands, or swerfs about it. So that's just an absolute base level of some ways that we can make money through cosplay. But maybe a better question is, do we? Is the money that comes in from this side hustle money, or I might become a homeowner money? Sarah Spaceman recently put out a great video that goes way more in depth on the present state of earning money through cosplay. She conducted a survey of over 250 people and asked them not just how much money they make, but how happy they are, if they're stable through what they do. It's a really great look at this topic. It covers so many different perspectives, and honestly, if you're here, I'm sure you've already watched it, but I've just got to make sure. I've got to catch any stragglers who aren't already watching Sarah Spaceman. I think it's Spaceman. I always say Spaceman. Looking at all these different possible gigs, of course it makes sense that some people who have them will call themselves professional cosplayers, and I'm not here to take that away from those who do. It's really cool that so many of these jobs are tied to the way that the cosplay community and scene has grown. These jobs were able to scale because the scene has scaled. So how did that happen? What was it like a few years ago when the idea of making money off of cosplay was a lot stranger than it seems right now? Oh my god, okay, I think I've got everything set up. I think we're ready to go live. We're only a little bit late. All right. Not my best performance as far as being on time, but also not my worst. Hello? Oh my gosh, let us enter here. Hopefully. Hi! Happy birthday! Oh my gosh, what a treat. To really understand how cosplay as job has changed over the years, I knew I'd find answers in a live stream. Not the one you're watching me do right now, but one from 7 years ago. In 2017, the cosplayer Mango Cyrene was also quitting their job, but they didn't do it in an email. They did it in a live stream. Mango Cyrene at the time was 25 and had been making a living full-time for 2 years from a cosplay Patreon, from guesting at cons and making YouTube videos. I remember when this stream happened, not because they were the first person to step back from the internet, but because they decided to tell everyone why. In a 3-hour live stream, they got honest about what the job was like and how they had ended up miserable doing the thing they used to love. Normally I say to check it out yourself, but fair warning, the audio on the stream is really rough. I can empathize, honestly. I forgot how New York City in the winter works and accidentally scheduled my own stream for the exact moment the radiators would start to scream. I do need to open a window. And that opening a window so I don't melt would mean that the entire rich audio tapestry of rush hour Brooklyn would become part of this video. It might be fine for you on here. It's probably crazy over there. I was, one of the... Oh, the helicopter's going by. You don't realize the audio nightmare of your block until you have to have the window wide open. Happens when you're live, and trust me, I'm doing my best in post to make it listenable. Something I noticed in the stream is how Mango Cyrene tends to refer more to monetizing their cosplay than thinking about being a professional cosplayer. And those two words have different connotations. The word professional can mean you got paid for something, and it can also just mean bringing expertise and dedication and respect. This might seem like semantics, but I do think it's worth mentioning. I don't call myself a professional cosplayer, but I would take it as a compliment if someone said my sewing looked professional. When I work with conventions or in programming, I try to be generous and thoughtful and appropriate. Professional is a shorter word for all that. Literally today, I saw a video on my YouTube homepage by CDogVA called I Gave Pro Cosplayers My $10 Cosplays. It's a super fun video. It's great to see all these cosplayers getting some shine on such a big platform, and I know the point of the title wasn't asking each participant to provide detailed tax info verifying their income. Shorthand serves a purpose. And I'm like not here to be a cop about what words people use to say someone's got skills. That's not the hill I want to die on today. I'm not dying on any hill today. They just made Garashir canon. I'm choosing life, thank you very much. Plus, that distinction, while important, is just not half as interesting to me as the other stuff Mango Cyrene talks about. In 2017, the word burnout hadn't quite entered the mainstream zeitgeist yet, but it's hard not to think of it when listening to this stream.
So how did it get to that point? How did cosplay become poisonous? How did I get so overwhelmed and depressed that the moment I was offered an unrelated to cosplay career opportunity, I grabbed it and got out of Dodge?
They talk about how they should have been living the dream, but how in so many ways that pressure to live the dream was majorly responsible for the anxiety and depression and addiction to work that drove them out of the career.
And a lot of it would have been avoidable if I'd known what I was getting myself into and was capable of being more self-aware.
There was an expectation for them, now that they were making a full-time living off of Patreon, to be a professional cosplayer.
I was still trying to learn new things and improve my skills, work with new materials. But suddenly I was facing this expectation of being a master level crafter. People were paying me to be a cosplayer. And when you're still trying to learn and develop your skills as an artist, that's a really dangerous environment to put yourself in. Making this is one of the most important aspects of learning, but it's hard to justify mistakes when you're making them on other people's dime.
Throughout the stream, they are incredibly honest about the personal experience of that pressure in a way that I think really helped a lot of cosplayers. I'm not going to go too much deeper on their own personal mental health journey because I really want to respect their peace, and because it's much more interesting to see how this stream captures a very specific snapshot of what it means to be a pro cosplayer. You have to understand how narrow this job description was even just 7 years ago. From what they shared, Mango Cyrene made their living from a combination of Patreon support, YouTube revenue, and appearance fees from events and cons. And one of the things contributing to their negative experience is that they did not see this as a sustainable career.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is cosplay. Because frankly, guys, again, going on script here, I think we're in a bubble. I think this cosplay bubble may pop at basing my entire career on a bubble like that did not feel wise to me at all.
And this might surprise you, but I completely agree with them. There was a bubble in cosplay of the kind of professional cosplayer that they're talking about there. The kind of content that they were making was very much kind of like, I am a person that makes costumes of video game characters that I love, and I do location photo shoots, and I post those pictures on my Patreon. And to me, when that was the main model of professional cosplay, I didn't want to be a professional cosplayer, but instead of it being the bubble burst and now we don't have professional cosplayers, it's more like the bubble evolved and now professional cosplay means a lot of different things instead of just that. So maybe that's part of it for me. I'm not the kind of cosplayer who focuses on the final product. I'm a process guy. I don't get a ton of beautiful photos. I'm usually just trying to make my apartment look decent. The part where I actually put on the costume is such a microscopic part of the pie for the way I cosplay. The full history of people earning an income off cosplay obviously goes back further than this live stream. But I wanted to zoom in here because to me this stream represents a moment where it suddenly felt like the ability to make money off of cosplay was opening up to more than just a small handful of people. There were years of cosplay where the caveat was, well, unless you're Yaya Han or Jessica Nigri, it's not going to happen for you. But in the mid-2010s, that was changing. And I say that from a place of infinite gratitude for the people that trailblazed this hobby and created opportunities for more people the way that I think Yaya and Jessica did. And even though it's been 7 years, I'm really grateful for this live stream and this cosplayer's vulnerability. These days, Fawn, as they go by now, has left Mango Cyrene behind. They stream FF14 and care a lot about their OCs. I can wish no greater peace and happiness to a human soul than to find a future filled to the brim with advanced OC lore. I hope they're happy, and you can check out their art on Twitch. So now that we've seen how the idea of pro cosplay has evolved and the many different ways you can make money off of this hobby, should you? Should you try and go down one of these paths knowing just how wrong it can go? Okay, have a great rest of your Sunday evening. Bye! Oh, where do I go? This is where I go. Okay, bye! That was such a sweaty stream. I am incredibly hungry right now. I'm gonna go get some dinner before I lock in for the rest of my night. There's a lot of stuff to do ahead of me. When I'm working these pretty late nights, I don't always have time to make a beautiful, nourishing meal. Plus, I'll be honest, even as a person who loves to make all kinds of stuff with his hands, cooking is absolutely my dump stat. Which is why I am so glad this video is sponsored by Factor. I eat really well when I'm eating Factor meals. They've all been really good. Factor meals are fresh, not frozen, and as someone who can be a frozen dinner fiend, the difference is immense. Each meal is restaurant quality, chef crafted. I don't need to prep everything, cook all the stuff, and deal with cleanup when I want to eat something really good. I can just heat up and enjoy. Also, I have absolutely exhausted my delivery radius options for takeout where I live. I'm weeping like Alexander over here. And not only is Factor cheaper than delivery, they offer a weekly menu of over 35 options, plus over 60 add-ons like snacks and juices. And this might be a narrow cast, but if you love beets the way that I do, their cold-pressed beet juice is one of the best juices I've ever had. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50lizardly to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50lizardly at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I'll get back to that editing in just a second. Every job is going to majorly suck sometimes in some way. So the question is, what kind of suffering can you handle? What shit sandwich can you eat? I read this advice years ago and it has stuck with me ever since, that sometimes when we focus too much on upsides and not enough on downsides, we majorly miscalculate what is going to actually make us the most happy. When I first started the job I'd eventually quit, it was because of this advice. I've been working in education my entire adult life and loved it deeply, but I, in my soul, needed to be at multiple random anime cons throughout the year, and school year schedules are famously inflexible. Getting an office job where I could dip out on random Fridays is pretty much the reason why I was able to cosplay the way I did at the time, even if it was less fulfilling than teaching. I know I started this video with me absolutely torching my career prospects in information technology, but I want to set the story straight. The office job I had for 4 years was a near perfect day job. Also, everyone who wasn't my two direct supervisors was great to work with. I love you guys. If that 5th and final year hadn't been so toxic to the point that I genuinely had no choice but to leave, I would probably still be there today. So when I was getting ready to leave that toxic day job, why did I decide to try and be a content creator? The biggest answer is that I had a really good idea of the shit sandwich I was going to be eating. Fully understanding the downsides of this move is why I made it. The single biggest influence was my friend Ginny D. She is an influencer, what can I say? Ginny was actually very much not trying to persuade me to go to YouTube. It's more that we are both very analytical people, and because we shared a hobby, we talked shop a lot. Over years of friendship, and also those last few months when I was really starting to plan my jump, I genuinely felt like I had an accurate sense of what I was getting myself into. I trusted Ginny to be honest with me about the non-hyperbolic suffering that comes from making this platform your livelihood. The idea when I was planning this move is that I would treat my content creation, the part of my day where I'm editing and scripting, where I'm running a channel and a small business, that would be my day job. I was swapping day jobs basically so that I could continue to cosplay the way I always had. That was the goal. And in a way, that's the boring part of why I don't call myself a pro cosplayer. Because when I am cosplaying, I am almost never directly making money. But when the camera is on and the mics are charged, when I'm sitting at my desk and looking at Final Cut Pro and trying to lock in, this is how I will actually be able to buy groceries. And the way that I cosplay has barely changed since then. In fact, I think I overcorrected in that first year or so, and I've been trying to get back to the way that I cosplayed before all of this. I see this pattern repeating among my friends who have jobs like the ones we talked about earlier. Our jobs are related to cosplay, which is something to be majorly grateful for, and if we're lucky, they afford us the time and funds for our own projects. But the job is so rarely the actual moment when we put on the costume. For me personally, I think the privilege of having a job that doesn't physically and emotionally drain you, and that also lets you have some disposable income, that part is where you get lucky. That matters so much more than if the job has anything to do with the hobby, with cosplay. I felt this way when my job was making sure that a projector had the right input selected, and I feel it now that my job is packing up a million prints in the morning. The Division reminds me of D&D actually. There's no such thing as a professional D&D player, in that no one is ever going to pay you to play D&D with your friends at home and have that internal experience. But if you do things related to D&D, if you make dice or you pro DM and take on the labor that's necessary to start a game, if you run an actual play that people love, there are so many ways that D&D can be part of your job. But no matter what path you choose, the joy you get out of a home game is going to be the same. And listen, one thing that I hope in 2024 is that we can all be cool with each other across the spectrum of monetization. You are not a worthless amateur if your art has an audience of one and doesn't bring in the bank. And you are not a horrible sellout if you try to survive capitalism with your art instead of just tangential to it. Plus, even that is a false binary. Plenty of people aren't trying to quit their day job. They're just trying to make enough with their expensive hobby to make it slightly less expensive in the long run. But here's the thing. You are probably a thoughtful person who can make the right decision for yourself if and to what extent you want to combine cosplay and capitalism. But there is a third C we need to talk about. Content. If you want to start a small business these days, congratulations, because you've just unlocked a second mandatory career. You're a content creator now. As someone who chose to be a content creator because I felt like it matched up with my goals and my ability to handle the bad parts, it makes me dizzy how compulsory social media is these days for virtually everyone. Almost all of the gigs we talked about before, like commissions and specialty supply shops, require some kind of social media presence now. And I just think that sucks so bad. For the first 8 years I cosplayed, I would be gutted time and time again when work that I was really proud of didn't quote-unquote do numbers, because I didn't realize yet that the skill of craftsmanship and the skill of social media marketing are completely separate. It sounds obvious in hindsight, but it took me a really long time to get there. These skills are apples and oranges. They are Andy Robinson and Rick Berman, and if you know which one is which. Social media is not a meritocracy. Over the past 3 years, I did a ton of freelance social media marketing for other clients because by then I had developed marketing as a separate skill, and it was a great way to make ends meet. Separating yourself from the thing you care deeply about and worked hard on so you can find a way to package that thing for an algorithm is really difficult. So that was my job sometimes, to do that packaging for other people. And these days you don't just need to have a social media strategy to get your work noticed, you also need to be a short-form video producer. It used to be normal to not know how to edit a video, and now that's like a business disadvantage. I find it genuinely diabolical the way that you can see dark patterns on platforms like TikTok and Instagram that are trying to seduce every user with the siren song of being a creator. It's the way Instagram gamifies notifications and tries to get you to unlock achievements. It's the way TikTok targets you with messaging about going from a viewer to a creator. It's so in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes, but instead it's in the future everyone will get 1 million views for something that is completely random and will lead to absolutely no further developments or opportunities. Why do these platforms do this? Why do they push so hard for you to not just consume, but also create? Because they need to. The ultimate goal of these platforms is simple: longer sessions. When users spend more time on the app, they can be shown more ads, the line can go up. Platforms need creators as much as they need consumers. This is why Instagram started to offer extremely small payments as part of the Reels bonus program to compete with TikTok Creator Fund. This is why the monetization on YouTube Shorts is trying and failing to keep pace with the platform's monetization of long form. They don't need to pay you enough to actually make a living, just enough to give you that hope that if you keep playing the game, one day maybe you might. And as if the platforms themselves weren't bad enough, we haven't even talked about the predatory companies that flood the inboxes of cosplayers. If you're a small or mid-sized artist, there will suddenly be a time when your DMs become flooded with these offers to collab or be sent something in exchange for posting about it. As the saying goes, if something is free, that usually means you are the product. These burner accounts send out automated messages that genuinely prey on the desperation social media creates in people to get their work noticed. And it makes me so angry how they can exploit an artist's hunger to be validated, to be seen as legitimate in their community, to be professional. I don't want it to seem like I'm dunking on anyone who responds to these kinds of deals. There are plenty of gifted collabs that are perfectly above board. There's nothing wrong with pursuing that, especially if it's materials you were going to use anyway, or a small business in the community especially. My anger is not at cosplayers and artists being part of the social media ecosystem. It's at the companies that obfuscate and manipulate intentionally. It makes me angry to see a young cosplayer's enthusiasm and excitement for that validation to be taken advantage of just because they're not as cynical as I can be. And it's true that the slippery slope of social media is not where all cosplay lives. There are plenty of cosplayers who barely post themselves or their work, and you can go to any con in America and find a jaw-dropping build from someone who hasn't logged into anything in like a year. It's just this self-perpetuating cycle of social media that tricks us all, myself included. The posts from the people who had to get good at social media marketing are the posts that you see, and it creates this shiny, engaging mirage. And I don't know, man, it gets to you sometimes. I need to clean this place. There's so much dust in here. If I start 2025 with a dusty studio, I think I'm gonna snap. Being prepared beforehand and well-informed about the downsides of this job doesn't make them magically not exist. 2024 is almost over, and if you go by the numbers, I'm ending this year in my flop era. My last two long forms never really found their footing in the algorithm, and even though I was really proud of them, they just didn't reach that many people. When I started this job, the idea was that my one-man video production studio would be the thing that supported my costume making. And I don't know, it sounds kind of cringe to say, but I just didn't account for how much I was going to love producing videos. I love trying to conceptualize videos that are as cool as the builds themselves. I love structuring narratives around what I'm making. I love thinking about ways to combine formats. I've been cosplaying for 15 years. It took me a long time to figure out how to separate my self-worth from my work as a craftsperson, but I'm there now and I have been for a while. I think I have a realistic view of what my craftsmanship strengths and weaknesses are, and I'm at peace with all of it. I love crafting cosplays, period. But now I have something tangential to that. I really want to make this the career. I want to make long form videos that people enjoy and watch, and I want to fuck it, let's do numbers. My gross income last year was under 30,000 and my net was under 20,000. I don't need to be making six figures. I just would like my scraping by to be a little less scrapey. I don't want to get too deep in my own personal weeds here. I think that can make people feel like they need to either comfort me or give me advice, and I'm really okay on either of those. This is not a cry for help. I'm just trying to be honest here for anyone who is considering making the same jump that I made. Up and down performance is fine. That's one thing. That's part of the gig. But release after release after release, each performing worse than the last, is rough. And I know there are lots of people who really love what I do because they leave such nice comments. If you were thinking about it, I mean, the keyboard is right there and it really means a lot and also helps the video. But the thing is, I signed up for a job where the thing that pays me is me focusing on the system and trends instead of the individual. I need to be looking at the overall analytics and not single data points. It is my job to drive growth. It's my job to treat my business like a business. I, like all of us, have to engage with capitalism in order to survive it. We had to talk about capitalism. There's no way I was gonna make a video about jobs without a little bit of this flavor, because your idea of what counts as professional is shaped by your idea of what jobs are, what labor means, and what value means. I realized this recently talking with a friend who wasn't American. She was telling me about different labor categorizations in her country that protect gig workers, so that people who work contract to contract have an easier path getting on unemployment. I will never know peace now that I know some governments just do that. So when people get paid for cosplay, why are they being paid? What is the exchange of value and capital that actually happens? The irony to me is that the closer you get to purely professional cosplay, the further you get from it in spirit. There was one time in my life that I got paid to dress up like a character I really liked. This was a professional cosplay gig. There's almost no other way to describe it. In 2020, Marvel reached out to me, which is a wild thing to say, for an upcoming episode of their series Marvel Becoming. My friend Mark, the one with the Etsy store, helped me co-build a beautiful Kitty Pryde cosplay. Scott Pope made a killer Lockheed puppet. My buddy Cass made my hip pads. I cannot underline enough just how rare this gig was. The rate for this build was pretty decent, and everyone we worked with on set was genuinely wonderful. So why did this happen? And why doesn't it happen more? The episode was part of a promotional livestream to announce Kitty's debut to Marvel Strike Force, the mobile game. The build was being paid for because it functioned as an ad. It says so much that you have to be literally Marvel to pay cosplayers what their skill is worth. And as to how we can make this kind of thing happen more, I kind of don't have a good answer. Marvel Becoming, the web show where they would showcase these cosplayers' incredible talents and pay them fairly, hasn't uploaded new episodes in a really long time. I loved building this costume with this team of people. I loved working on this episode. I even really love Kitty Pryde, and this is definitively professional cosplay. There's just no other way to describe it. But despite that, it felt completely different than the way I feel when I cosplay for myself. Because I wasn't getting paid to have a personal connection to Kitty Pryde's superpowers or her character's history of being portrayed by a trans mask icon. I was being paid for my crafting labor, and just as crucially, my labor as an entertainer, being able to put words together in front of the camera. When I make YouTube videos, it financially doesn't matter if I have a deep love for the cosplay or if I feel artistically inspired by creating the video narrative. What I get paid for is my ability to get eyes on this screen screen to watch ads. I've been so busy this month with editing and trying to catch up on administration, I've had almost no time to craft. When I do streams on Patreon, a lot of the time that's the most crafting I've done that week or even that month. I was incredibly privileged to leave my job when it turned toxic. The ability to get out of there and try and make a career change happen, that is where I was so lucky. But having this job that I have now is not an escape from American capitalism and the unending pressures to make that line go up. I can never clock out of the awareness that I need to be increasing output, improving efficiency, and lowering turnover time. That every moment I rest is a moment that I don't produce value. Is it okay if I just sew something really quick? I think that would be nice. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. What does the word professional really mean? I thought that was the interesting topic here, the question I wanted to explore in this structured rant of a video. You are probably smarter than me and already figured out what I straight up almost forgot, that that's only half the equation. What does cosplay mean? Because sure, yeah, cosplay is something social and concrete we do with other people. It is a community and a hashtag. And this interpersonal aspect of the hobby is a space where people can work. We can exchange goods and services. But cosplay isn't just that part alone. Cosplay is also the feeling you get when you look in a mirror and you see what you worked so hard to create looking back at you. Cosplay is seeing a narrative and not just saying, wow, that was really good, but instead, that is part of me and I'm going to bring that part to life. Cosplay lives in the secret little references and details you put in a costume that only you will know are there. Cosplay is what happens when you don't care that no one at the con is going to get the reference because they aren't who you're doing it for. This part of cosplay is not output. You can't distill it down to a good or a service. It's too weird to be an advertisement, and it's not efficient or marketable enough to be entertainment on its own. From where I'm standing 15 years deep in this hobby, this is why we keep doing it. And unlike everything else surrounding it, this intangible, internal experience can't really become a commodity. I don't call myself a pro cosplayer, because if I really believe that this is the core of what cosplay truly is, I wouldn't want to exchange that for money, even if I could. And maybe most importantly here, if you really think, like me, that the core joy of cosplay isn't a potential job, that means we are all just f***ing cosplayers. Whether you buy your costumes or not, whether you've gone to a handful of cons or a decade's worth, whether you make a living in this community or with something completely unrelated, we are all doing the same ass thing. Like, it's our cosplay community. Get Bugs Bunny in here. If there is any single person we can use as an avatar for pro cosplay, it's Yaya Han. Over the decades, Yaya has leveraged her following and CV to work directly with retailers, revolutionizing access to cosplay materials in nationwide chains in America. You probably already knew that, but you might not know that at DragonCon just a few weeks ago, Yaya had just finished a new cosplay. She debuted a cosplay of Idea, one of the main villains from Final Fantasy VIII. Yaya Han went to the Final Fantasy meetup where she was one of 5 cosplayers from this 1999 game. This is what I'm f***ing talking about. This is cosplay. I'm not in her head. I don't know her exact thought process, but I can guarantee you Final Fantasy VIII was not like a strategic, trend-driven move on her part. To see the trailblazer for professional cosplay craft a beautiful costume for a character there's basically no demand for is so mind-meltingly sick. It's so metal. FF8 fans, don't be mad at me. I'm your brother. I'm a diehard FF6 fan. The call is coming from inside the house. Nobuo Uematsu was my top artist on Spotify Wrapped this year. At the end of the day, I call myself a content creator because that's the most concise way I can sum up what I do for a living. My journey into and through this job is complicated. Source, this whole video. It's weird and rewarding and challenging and exhausting. It's been a tough month, but you know, we all have tough months at our job. And if I had a time machine and I could go back to that moment we started the video with, I would send that 7 a.m. July email every time. I wouldn't write and film and edit these videos if I knew I was gonna just let them sit on a hard drive. They aren't for me, they're for you. At least that's what I really hope. But there is nothing on this earth that can keep me from crafting silly little projects even when no one's looking, even when the cameras are off. I am not a pro cosplayer because I don't want to call myself one. Because in my heart of hearts, I want to protect this part of the process from strategy and efficiency. And I want this magic to be something that absolutely anyone in the community can get to. Whoa, hey, you made it to the end of the video. That's really cool. Most people don't make it here. This isn't even cosplay. I just wanted to craft something because I was feeling antsy and I've been dropping really subtle, tasteful hints that I'm in my Star Trek era. I dragged literally every person in my family into Deep Space Nine this year and I just wanted to make them a little something for it. Maybe more than any video I've ever put out, this video was hugely shaped by my patrons. I was initially going to package this one really differently, but hearing from y'all helped me realize this video would be a lot better if I just centered my own journey instead of getting didactic with it. I want to give a super special thank you to Eleanor, Camille Mack Harris, Grace Lilly, Analik, Megan Von Ackerman, last one here, Lambda Hansen, Larzard, Arden Winner, KFry84, and Eli. Thank you so much to The Littlest Pickle, Stephanie C., and Hust, and an enormous thank you to Kendrick, Thomas Drury Wang, Toria, and Nami Sparrow. I really did want to talk more about techno-feudalism in this video, but I ran out of time, so I'll put a link in the description. I say it because it's true. A like and a thoughtful comment really does help this video reach more eyes. And if you're looking for something else fun to put your eyes on, I highly recommend the last video that I put out. I just started a brand new cosplay project. I think it's going to end up being some of my best work, so I'm so excited to see where this build goes, and I hope you decide to get in on the ground floor. As always, stay hydrated, stay weird, and I'll catch you next time.